Today we have another TD5 Defender on the dyno, and we are going to be doing a uprated clutch, a 550 GTB turbo, an uprated intercooler, boost hoses, I think exhaust, our full sort of 550, bringing this one up to full potential GTB, a live GTB550 spec. So had a little bit of thought of how I'm going to plan things out today, so hopefully I can piece things together a bit better than some of the other videos. I know there's some of you have been appreciating those, so I also appreciate that you let us know that as well. And without further ado, we're going to start off with this one. First things first, it's just been presented to the dyno. It's not been strapped up or anything like that. First things I want to be doing with this is just giving the vehicle a health check, checking fluids. Has it got oil? Has it got coolant? Does it look like it has any issues in the engine bay at all? I'm going to be plugging in, checking for fault codes, making sure the ECU is in good health, and that there's no nasty codes in there. If there's any problems with anything like that, anything like an airflow meter that's not working or an injector that doesn't look quite right, we'll obviously either replace or address accordingly. Never want to tune potentially a poorly vehicle. So when you do bring a vehicle into a live for a remap, we always give your vehicle a health check, and I always say this, it's for two reasons. One, we don't want to tune a poorly vehicle and make things worse. That's not going to help anybody. And also we need to health check it to make sure it's in great shape. So if your vehicle is in great shape, it's going to represent our products and what we're doing very well. So right, let's do this. So at a glance, it looks like we have a completely standard engine bay. Cat still in place down there. Original TD5 turbo, stock airbox. Just checking out the EGR. I can see a tube, and it still retains the EGR on the vehicle. Okay, so it's just to check the fluids in here, and then we'll plug in and do some diagnostic checks. Right, so health check done. Everything looks okay. We're all strapped up on the dyno now and ready to do our first few pulls. So what we're actually doing now, just in case you're thinking, well, he said he's going to put a 550 on the vehicle. What we're doing now is we're just going to power test the vehicle just to see where she's at before we start. It's always interesting to get some baseline runs just to make sure as well. We was talking about checking the vehicle's in good health. Power testing is always a good way as well to find out if she's producing good power nicely and smoothly, cleanly, etc. So right, let's jump to bring a bit of temperature up into this vehicle, and we'll bring you along with us. We'll show you a few power tests, exactly how it is before we perform the upgrades. Hey, who noticed that the dyno's a different colour now? We painted it black. Right, so we're going to jump into our first run on the dyno now. Again, this is just a baseline pull, a representation of how the vehicle performed when it came to alive tuning before the 550 upgrade. So quite down on power from factory. Usually see about 125 horsepower. This one does need an airflow meter. It is hugely down on the torque as well. So perhaps it desperately needs a turbo, but no doubt we'll figure it out as we go along. But that is essentially our baseline pull. So again, just a representation of how the vehicle performed when it was presented to alive. So once again, just in case the audio wasn't very good on that one, the fan on the dyno was still running, I was allowing the vehicle to cool down. So 93 horsepower and 232 newton meters of torque, which is quite a bit down from what the factory vehicle should actually produce. So no doubt we will figure out what's going on there when we tear this vehicle down for the turbo install. We do know that this does need an airflow meter, being a 15p Defender as well. It could be that is simply the problem. So just a little look around the vehicle as well. It looks like we've got a nice looking set of banded steels on there. I think these are similar, if not the same. No, similar at a glance, as a look similar to what we have on our own 90. So I don't think our 90 is actually inside the workshop at the moment, but just a little glance what's going on. Saxo race car, that one belongs to me. Freelander, that I think that one's a parts car at the moment, a bit of a donor. We've got our truck cab 90 on the ramp there. This is something that we are building. We've been building this one for a little while now, and we will feature this one at some point, but as you can see at a glance, done to a very high standard. We've got this, I believe it's a 2.2 Defender in today, and wheels just on this one. I believe it's a stage 2 upgrade, so that's mapping and an intercooler. And there's a Evoque in as well for a service. So we're partly way through installing the suspension on this 90. It's gone for the Alive Comfort suspension. So consists of the Alive lowering springs, which ride so much better than original equipment, and of course Alive dampers as well, manufactured by Bilstein. This will be this is actually a non-anti-roll bar model. So we will be installing a pair of anti-roll bars. We will be going with a original equipment front roll bar, and at the rear we'll be going with our uprated rear roll bar. Okay, so Will and I have just finished up fitting the suspension, which has consisted of the Alive Bilstein dampers, the IBAC lowering springs, and a pair of anti-roll bars, a stock front one, and a live tuning uprated rear anti-roll bar. So with the suspension complete, what's next is now the engine work. So I may have said in the beginning of this this video that this engine-wise is actually completely standard. So EGR, cat, turbo, air filter, airbox, etc. is all original. We're going to go to the Alive GTB550, and what that will mean is a custom air filter, sports exhaust system, silicone hoses, and an Alive ultimate intercooler as well. Right, so just a glance at what we have before we do start here properly. So going back to our dyno session, we dynoed the vehicle and it was a little down on power compared to what a standard TD5 should actually make. I think it was around 94 or 95 horsepower. Looks like the boost hoses have either been bleeding through quite excessively. There's a build-up of sludge and stuff and gunk around the EGR and the boost hose, but also looking over across around there, the map sensor area, I don't know if it's a leak on the map sensor or not, but everything is really gooey. And there's an awful lot of grime on there, so it looks like this little seal at the front of the engine there is leaking. It's all over the EGR. So what do we find in here? Wet. That would not have been helping power. Christ. Oh yeah, she's soaked. Just check the condition of the turbo. Looks okay actually, original unit. 120,000 miles. Not bad. So with the stock turbo removed, this is the area we're going to be working on, I guess. Start off by changing the original oil feed and return. It's simply not long enough, the feed, for the slightly different orient of the GTB550, and the drain as well. It's somewhere sort of over here, but you can almost fit one, but it's a lot of pressure on this pipe. So we'll be fitting 2 new oil filters. There's an O-ring down the back of here as well, which we change on the filter housing. You need to remove the filter housing from the block, or at least bring it forward to get access to this banjo bolt. And because we disturbed that little O-ring down the back there, we always like to fit a new one. We do send a new O-ring. So if you do buy a GTB450 or 550 kit and you get a green O-ring and you don't know where it goes, down there. So with the intercooler removed, there's lots of space for an Alive ultimate intercooler. Give all this a bit of a clean, hoover out. An awful lot of farm in the front end. So chatting to Will, asking his thoughts on all this sort of oil. We are wondering if the front seal's leaked, and as the fan goes round it kind of just blows it everywhere. The seal, the hose looks okay, just covered in oil and slime. The factory hoses do eventually just bleed oil through. Our silicone hoses, I'll just grab one, bear with me. So our silicone hoses, this is the one, kind of sits here. So our silicone hoses, they have a special layer on the inside. They're made out of many different layers. I think they're more ply than Samco, but what you'll see is it's probably very difficult to see on the camera, but there is a special liner in there, a Nomex liner I believe it is, and it just stops the oil from bleeding through. So yeah, this was the boost hose that we said had just become porous. Essentially it started leaking an awful lot. So with the TD5, there's always a lot of oil in the intake tract due to the breather system on the vehicle, and eventually this does bleed through a factory hose. Right, well worth a mention here, as part of doing the turbo install, we always change the oil filters. So just lifted the lid off this one. That is so sticky. I get the feeling, genuine Land Rover, I get the feeling that that's not been changed in a long time. That's really heavy. We're going to cut that open and see what's inside it. We've seen this before where a garage has changed the filters and they're not aware that there's a secondary filter. So I've just been changing this one. These get full and they sort of go full of like solidified or jellified oil, for want of a better word, shall I say. So we'll cut it open, we'll see what it is. But yeah, I mean, Land Rover fitted or installed this here to prolong the service life, to make the service life longer, but we've heard of it a few times. Customers have owned vehicles for years and years and they've never changed that, so Will's going to cut that open now. That's all. Is that solidified? Wow. Yeah. And at the top there. So yeah, we was right. Land Rover part, probably, I don't know whether it's the original one or not. The vehicle has 120,000 miles, but it's I mean, this is for this reason. We have this where customers say we had oil last week. Well, first of all, if we're changing the turbo, we need to know, we're going to put a warranty on a turbo, we need to know it's got not only fresh oil but the correct grade of oil and that the filters have been changed correctly. So that's the end of the day now for me and Will. Suspension job and strip down here. Quite a lot of grime on the harness and everything around that side of the engine. Thoughts are probably could have done with a steam before we did this. No doubt we'll give it a steam once it's reassembled as well. There is a rather special gearbox going on this one as well. So more on that later. We'll be carrying on with this one tomorrow. So we're just at the point where Will's just been cleaning up and been installing the uprated head bolts, and we'll soon be ready to lay that cylinder head back on there and then continue with the rebuild, and then again install the 550 turbo. Okay, so Will and I have just pulled the gearbox out of this one, and what's going in this one, as well as an uprated clutch, is a refurbished gearbox with a V8 fifth in it. Okay, so this is the gearbox that's going in the Defender. It's from Winchester Gears, and it's the one with the uprated V8 fifth. So we're holding a steady 4 bar of fuel pressure, just over 4 bar.
and the engine's just cut out. Right, so we did lose fuel pressure. It's there now. Sounds like there's a lot of air in the system. No smoke from the exhaust. Woo, woo. Efficiency. Good turbo, proper tuning. Attention to detail. Figuring out all of the little issues along the way. Not come easily, this one.